Hey everyone, welcome to Encounters USA. If it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or dogmen you're looking for, you came to the right place. Now listen up as we listen to some of the latest encounters. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Encounters USA. I'm your host, Matthew Hines, and today we have our first encounter witness. We have Tony Zaccaglini, and Tony is standing by, as far as I understand it, somewhere down by Mount Shasta. Now, Tony's going to tell us all about himself and about his encounter, so let's not dilly-dally. Let's just go right to Tony. Tony, thank you for being on Encounters USA.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, it was really nice to hear about your encounter in the first place, because of all the encounters I've heard, this is really, I mean, the length of it, and then it happened, you know, is just kind of a peaceful, and just your reaction is all very interesting to me. So let's just jump right into it. Tony, first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
My favorite pastime is basically just researching a ton of Bigfoot encounters. So that's basically what I do, that and music. Okay.
Do you have a commercial interest that you'd like to plug real quick, or do you have a band or anything? Nothing like that? What is it?
Motley Crue.
Motley Crue?
Mm-hmm.
That's your band? Are you actually playing with them, or that's just your favorite band? Okay.
Favorite.
All right. Well, I better stop before you tell me that you're not going to take it. So let's just move right along. All right. So Tony, what were you doing there? What were you doing? How old were you? What were the circumstances of your encounter?
We were off camping in this location. That's my grandma's favorite because she spread her dead husband's ashes there. I was 13, and it was during early June.
Okay, and you were with your grandmother. Anybody else?
Grandmother and grandfather.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry I missed that. So you're just there spreading ashes, and what were you just there temporarily, or what was the circumstances of you being there?
At the campsite or in Shasta?
In Shasta.
I was just going to visit my grandparents for the summer, and then I ended up staying longer than I expected, but I had a lot of fun.
Okay. And so, Tony, I need to just clear this up now. Your grandmother, you're with your grandmother, and you guys are camping, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your grandmother is there for the purpose of spreading ashes?
No, she just likes the location because that's where she spread the ashes in the past.
All right. That's one thing that I didn't understand from your email. Okay. So just describe what, we'll just go ahead and go through the encounter now, and then we'll go ahead and look at other aspects.
So the campsite I was at, it was mostly flat, but it was really thick forest. Like you could only see a little skylight when you would look above. About 20 feet to the right of the campsite, there was this little ditch-like area that had a little creek in it. And me, still being kind of a kid, was bored and didn't really want to help set up the camp. So I went down to play in the creek. And then I was there for a while, and I was walking down, following, I'm not sure which direction, more deep into the woods from where we came. And as I was walking, I stumbled upon this large, very hairy thing crouched down in the water, or crouched down by the water, drinking water by scooping it up with his hands. And I observed it for about 30 seconds before it stood up, noticed me, made direct eye contact with me, and sprinted off, like up the ditch. But as it was sprinting off, I could hear the loud, like, footsteps going up, which shocked me. And I was just in a state of fear to the point I could not move at all. So I was so shocked by what I saw.
Okay, so that is just incredible. I really, everybody listening to this is, I don't know what your reaction would be, but I don't even know what my reaction would be, but I would also think that I would just be frozen. And then I have to ask you first off, can you describe like this thing physically? How tall was it?
Way taller than me. If I had to give an estimate, somewhere between 6 and 7 feet.
Okay. And so it wasn't like, you've heard accounts of these 10-footers, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't one of those. And
no.
I'm going to ask you some questions later on. And this is based on something that I heard. But okay, so this thing is you think it's about 7 feet tall?
Mm-hmm.
And is it muscular or is it thin?
Oh, the shoulders were very, very broad.
Okay. And did you get a sense of an age of it? What was the color of its hair?
The color of its hair was a light brownish. I couldn't really tell an age.
Okay. And while it was drinking, did you get a look at the teeth? Were the teeth white? Were they sometimes like a horse, you can tell the age of a horse by its teeth. Did you get a look at its teeth?
No, sir. It was at about like this angle, and I was looking at it from its side, and it actually had hair all over its face, kind of covering it, except it was missing hair, but the hair on its side would come down, and kind of like what mine's doing. Really?
Its hair was that long on top? Or was it all over?
It was all over his body, and it was very long. It
was all that length?
Yes.
Wow. That must be very hot in the summer. All right. So I'm very curious. So let's just, you're just walking down there. And at what point, were you not paying attention? You must have, you're coming from a hill. At what point did you see this thing? And did you keep going when you saw it? Were you just kind of spacing out?
Yeah, I was walking down the creek a little bit, just actually spacing out, collecting rocks and I was a kid, until I didn't really notice it until I was about 10 feet away from it-ish. Because it was being very quiet. I heard no noise at all. But after the blanket of fear washed over, I remember screaming as loud as I could and running up to my grandma. But she got mad at me because she thought a coyote was attacking me. Mm-hmm. Then she ended up not believing me about it.
Okay, so let's go back to you're 10 feet away from this thing, and this thing, you say this lasted about 30 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in that 30 seconds, because we're looking, especially on this podcast, we're looking for anomalous things, and one thing that I would think would be anomalous, or that people have claimed that these creatures have certain powers, is how are you able to just walk up on it? And did you surprise it? Did it look?
I think I did surprise it, and I think the reason I was able to walk up on it is the sound of the water was so loud, and I wasn't walking on the road or on the dirt or anything. I was walking in the water, so my footsteps were kind of silent.
Okay, amazing. All right, so, and then prior to the encounter, did you have any fear? Did you have a mood, any mood swings, I guess I'll say? Did anything come over you, like a depression or anything change your mood?
No, not at all. It was actually a really good day before, and I was really excited to go camping.
Okay, and the weather, I guess, was sunny?
Yes, about 80 degrees-ish.
Yeah, boy, it must have been great. So I have actually looked on the map, and do you know where? We don't have to look or talk about specifically where you were, but you were south of Shasta, correct?
Yes, a little ways from a cloud off a old logging road.
Okay, so when between McLeod and I-5, were you somewhere there, or were you to the east of that?
I was on a road off of the Bicenic. What's that word?
Yeah, I could the scenic byway. I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
I
actually have a map if you would like me to show you.
Oh, it's okay. That's some homework for our listeners and our viewers, I guess. I'll put. I'm going to post the Google screenshot that I took. It's got Mount Shasta in it. And all right, so let's get back to this encounter, because I want to know this Bigfoot when he saw. Okay, you are we assuming it's a male?
Yes, I'm pretty sure by the way it was built, and I didn't see any type of breast. It was flat.
Okay. Okay, and we don't have any sense of the age, and he was frightened by you.
He was just. I feel like he was shocked that I kind of snuck up on him without him noticing. That's why he turned around and kind of ran off very fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we're going to be talking about this in a little while, but considering that what has happened to other kids in that area, or other people actually too, I'd say you might be very fortunate. So, did you have any sense of why he took off? I mean, did he show any emotion, whatever, when he looked at you? You think he showed surprise?
I think it was just shock. He looked me dead in the eyes, like, "Whoa, I didn't know you were there." And then a couple seconds later, he just turned to the side and just ran off.
Okay, did you, when he made that, whatever you took for shock, was that like a human? Was that a human thing that you'd see like me or you do, or?
Yeah, like when something surprises you so much, you just like stop for a second and think about it before continuing on.
Wow. So you think this is a very conscious thinking?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, that is amazing. So let's just eliminate some things that we think that we know about these Bigfoots. And the first one is that they seem to, a lot of people claim that they have this omniscience. They know you're there and whatever, but you were able to sneak up on him basically because you covered your sound. I assume there was no wind, and so he wouldn't have been able to smell you. So this one at least had no extrasensory powers. He had no Bigfoot radar or whatever. So go ahead.
I think he was also kind of distracted by drinking water because he was like gulping it down.
Okay. All right. So when you're basically, are you sitting on, because in that area, they're just ridges and valleys. Are you on a ridge, or you're on a ridge or a valley?
The house, it's right.
I mean, where you had this encounter. Was it up in the mountains, or was it in kind of the lowlands?
Little lands.
Okay. And any sign of any other Bigfoots around? Did you have any feeling that there were any other around?
No, I had no feeling that any of them were around. I had no feelings of being watched after that or any of it.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. So, Tony, do you want to add anything else?
Yes. After my encounter, it was about when the sun was setting, so maybe about like 8 o'clock-ish, 8:30. My grandma wanted to go for a little walk down the creek. And I was like, not at all. But she started to talk me into going because she's put the idea in my head that I did not want to be at the campsite alone. It's better to just stay with people. So I was like, okay, can we not be gone for that long? She's like, sure, the sun's setting. So as we were walking down the creek, following the same path I did, when we stumbled upon where I encountered the thing, there were footprints there. And that kind of got my grandma, like, she's changed her mind about it, kind of. But my grandma's more anti-technology type of person, so we weren't allowed to have cell phones or anything, so I had no way to take a picture of the footprint.
Have you ever gone back there?
Yes, 2 other times.
Okay, but no encounters and no evidence?
No, sir.
And I bet you were looking this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So the last thing that I want to ask you about this encounter, unless there's something else that you want to add, is just the psychology of it. You see something that you don't even know exists. And what was your reaction was fear, but you sat there for 30 seconds. What point did you start to get, you were afraid of it from the beginning?
Yes.
And why were you afraid of it?
I didn't know what the hell it was. And it didn't even cross my mind that it was a Bigfoot until after it ran away and I was running up to tell my grandma.
Did you think at any time it was a human being, some kind of human?
It was way too hairy to be human.
Okay.
Unless there's caveman living out there. But
okay.
That never crossed my mind.
Okay. But for a brief second, you looked at its eyes, right? And yes. You had some kind of a communication with it. And, yes. We hear lots of stories about people saying that, and then I had something put in my mind. Was anything planted in your mind other than to pee your pants and run away?
No, not at all.
Okay. And I know you didn't pee your pants. I just had to throw that in for dramatic effect. Maybe it'll be like a sound bite. I'm kidding. All right, Tony. Well, that is great. And if there's something as we're talking that you want to add to that, please do. So this sparked your interest in the paranormal, you told me. So yes. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, on what particular aspects of the paranormal you're talking about?
Everything. I just kind of became obsessed and researched everything I could. Stories, encounters. Missing 411 came up a lot, which struck my interest. But Bigfoot, werewolves, dogmen, ghosts, all that type of crap.
Great. Yeah, you're right on that. You're on the right channel because that's what we're interested in here. So let me ask you this. What is your take on, and I'm going to do this piecemeal because I don't want one big general answer, but what is your take on Bigfoot and missing 411? And I'm sorry, Tony, let me just say this for anybody who came from Mars and doesn't know, David Paulides does these 411 books about people who go missing in places like Mount Shasta, mostly national parks. And they're just they have some things in common. So I have a theory that somehow these Bigfoot, based on Indian or Native American lore, that somehow they might be involved in this. What's your take on it?
My take on it is it's highly possible, but I believe there are some that are scared of humans or won't come near. They're more observant, but I believe they have some connection with the shitload of people disappearing and never reappearing.
And do you have any theory about what's the purpose of that? Is it just feeding?
Yeah, hunger, anger even, or territorial.
Okay. There's another aspect to this. Actually, before we go into that, do you want to cite anything in particular that makes you think that they might be responsible? Can you think of a particular case?
No, not really. Just all the encounters, one after the other, and all the missing people and people reappearing on miles away from where they disappeared, even little kids. It's just very strange.
Yeah, that's one thing that is very odd. And so I'm just going to throw something at you. Have you ever done anything with the dogman?
No.
Okay.
I researched it a bit, but I know the basics of it. But
okay. So you know about this the Martin boy that disappeared in the, Great Smoky Mountains in the 60s?
I don't believe I do.
Well, that's one that David Paulides talks about, like on every show. And so when that boy disappeared, there were witnesses that said that they saw a bear, or it's been so long since I've heard the account. Somebody said they saw a bear with something like up on a hillside with something over its shoulder. And was that this Martin boy? Was that this thing that they mistook for a bear? But there's a number of things that this could be. And I have an ex-Green Beret that I'm going to have on this show pretty soon. And he's talking about, well, there's a lot of ex-veterans out in these woods, right? Oh, you've looked into that also? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you'd be very interested in this. This guy was in the 10th Special Forces group. And so we talked about how they were supposedly alerted SF guys. And I've never heard of anybody like wearing Green Berets in the field. So my first question would be, how would they know that these guys were Special Forces at all? Because usually they hide when they go do stuff. So anyway, that's a whole different aspect of it. But there are accounts that say that there are bears that are abducted, that these kids come back and they say, oh, it was a bear. It was a bear man or whatever else. And so, a kid who doesn't know what a Sasquatch is going to say that that's a bear. So I tend to agree with that. Why do you, you looked at this thing. What did you think it was? Was it an ape?
I had no clue what it was, but it looked more human than monkey or ape-like.
Really? And if you saw it again, do you think that it would be possible to rudimentary make some kind of communication with it?
I have no clue, but I'd try. But I believe they have somewhat human. They have human instinct, and I'm sure they're able to communicate in some way, such as the bangs and knocks in the woods. They're more intelligent than just bears and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna pick your brain on stuff because I've heard a lot of things. I listen to these podcasts. And how far are you from Bluff Creek? I'm sorry. How far was that encounter for Bluff Creek? I've never looked at that on a map. That's up by the border, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not even close to you. Okay.
Yes. Very close, actually.
Okay. So here's my question. There's a guy I heard talking that said that these things might be, and what was the color of yours? Was it black or brown?
Light brown.
Light brown. There's this one that says that Patty, and this is a guy researching. It's not me saying it, and to me, I don't know. It kind of sounds plausible, but he seems to think that these big ones, the 10-footers, these are the ones that eat kids, and they come and pick on the Indian villages and terrorize everybody. But they also have offspring from like human women. And there's a guy who said, I don't know if you have, tell me if you've heard this, but seems to think that the Chinese that were mining in that area were kidnapped. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've heard stories like that before.
And so he seems to think that the shorter ones, like Patty, might be some kind of hybrid from that. And I don't know what to make of it, but it certainly sounds odd, and it certainly sounds completely bizarre, but also possible because of that story about that thing that they had in Russia. You've heard about that where they bred this guy had children with one of these creatures, a Sasquatch.
I believe I did, yes. So
the hybridization is possible, and then also there was another incident in China. So that's a very interesting aspect of it. And can you see the Chinese government making a claim to these are our citizens or something, or I don't know, maybe anyway. So that's a very interesting aspect of it. Any take on that? Any thoughts?
I think it's possible, but I haven't read that many reports or anything about it, but it's an interesting thing to research.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know you're a younger guy, but have you seen the $6 Million Man Bigfoot edition? Have you heard about it?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so tell me why. Why is Bigfoot with aliens on the $6 Million Man in the 1970s, a century before you were born?
Repeat that again, please.
Why is Bigfoot on the $6 Million Man in the 1970s with aliens? Do you think there's an alien connection?
I've heard, especially up in Mount Shasta, there's many people who have that theory. I think it's highly possible, but I also believe they could just be human and just surviving.
Okay, so why do you think that it would be possible that they would have extraterrestrial connections?
The stealth, for one thing, and how those giant things can be quiet and sneak around people without them even noticing. But I also believe that can be from years and years and generations of learning how to do that and hunting. So I'm kind of in between that theory, but I think it's very interesting.
Okay. So I want to talk about on the end of your encounter, if we can jump back to that. You said that Bigfoot, it went up a bank, right?
Very fast.
And can you, if you were going to run up that bank, would you be able to do it without grabbing stuff in front of you?
Not at all. Okay,
so
it did it like it was nothing.
Yeah, and imagine that. I mean, think about that much weight. I mean, if that thing, I mean, think if you go to the gym or whatever, and those 45-pound plates, they would be like 10, 20 of those. Some of them would be 20 of those plates. I mean, exactly. that's a construction vehicle, and they're able to move that much mass up, with apparently Little E. So how is that even possible? And I'm just going to say this to you, and if you're listening to this podcast, you probably may have heard it before, but Ed Dames, the remote viewer, you know who he is?
No.
He was have you seen The Men Who Stare at Goats?
No.
Well, it is a movie that you must see, and it is about this Army, true story, an Army unit that went into like all these psychic things and just did everything they could to try to gain an edge over the Soviet Union. And one of the things they did was they remote viewed. Mm-hmm. And you know what remote viewing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ed Dames was the head remote viewer for the U.S. Army. And I asked him about it, and he said that they're not from here. And so if Ed says it, and remote viewers have access to information that we don't have. And if Ed Dames says that they're not from here, well, I don't think that they're from here. And I think that one of the pieces of evidence to support that is that if you came from a higher gravity, dimension, world, whatever, or like if we went to a lesser gravity place, we would be able to do the same thing.
Yes.
Right?
A good connection.
Yeah, so that's what I think. I think that for some reason, either they evolved somewhere else and came here, or else they're bouncing back and forth. Mm-hmm. And that could be crazy. I try to stay with the simplest things, but they obviously have a need for this much mass and this much muscle, which otherwise would just almost collapse on itself.
Yes.
In our gravity. So it's all very odd, and it's really a unique aspect. Have you seen this guy that has a magnetic hand of a baby Bigfoot? Well, that's on YouTube. So I've got to get that guy, because if they're magnetic, I actually You know how Politis says that these things, like these kids disappear in boulder fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wrote this book. I'm an author, but it's about how the government. It's called the Rainier paradigm. It's about how the government uses the HARP in Alaska to detonate Mount Rainier and kill everybody so they can resell the real estate. And so it's kind of a comedy, but the premise of it is that we found that rock formations have, I mean, this is from the 50s, but rock formations have magnetic orientation north and south, right? So just think if you can disrupt that magnetic orientation and you put a positive next to a positive formation, it's going to repel, right? And my premise of the Rainier paradigm is they found to do that on such a massive scale using the HARP that they can cause Mount Rainier or anything to erupt. And it's probably true, which is another story. But anyway, it's that magnetism that is apparent in these boulder fields. I mean, that's very prevalent because these are the type of igneous volcanic rock that have very strong magnetic orientations. And so when you're talking about going back to 411, David Politis says these things happen in these boulder fields. Well, if it has something, I mean, and if Bigfoot's like in Washington State, this is all volcanic rock where they hang out in the Cascades.
Yeah.
Igneous, formed in volcanoes, pushed up through the ground. Very magnetic. So it's maybe they're on a force field or something.
That's really interesting to think about.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, if you look at the science and you forget a lot of the other stuff, there are some really interesting rational explanations for these things. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans to do with this? Are you going to compile it into a book or something, or is this just a hobby for you?
I'm probably in a while going to compile it all into a big giant book from the past 6 years of research. Okay.
So can you talk a little bit about Mount Shasta?
Yes. There are a lot of, it's supposed to be the paranormal hotspot of the country, and I believe there are a lot of weird things happening, including aliens, Bigfoot, people going missing. I even have, if you look up Tony Zaccaglini on the computer, she comes up as missing, and she's been missing in the clouds since 80-something.
Who is that? A relation of yours?
Yes, it's my cousin.
Oh my gosh, it's Hannah?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain something of the circumstances of that?
I believe she was just walking home one night from her friends or boyfriends. I wasn't born. It was the 80s. And then it wasn't that far of a walk. It was just down the street, and she never made it. My extended family believes it was their neighbors, but I don't know. I feel like something else could be possible too.
Okay. And how long did the search go on? And what was the final conclusion? Reopened. It's still open.
It's been reopened a couple times. Yes. Nobody can figure out. The body was never found. Nothing.
Okay. So do you mind giving the location?
I don't know the exact street, but it was in McLeod.
McLeod. Okay. And have there ever been any other in known history of kids disappearing? Like, I guess it'd be of the European history.
Say that again, please.
Any other incidents of cases like that in McLeod?
All around Mount Shasta. I was reading about one. I forgot the guy's name. It happened back in 99, I believe. He went up in Mount Shasta climbing with two friends, but he wasn't feeling good while he was camping at 50-50, so he decided to get a 30-minute head start. And his friends started following him after about 30 minutes. And then one of them got sick, so he went back down to 50-50. But once one of the friends made it up to Lake Helen and found that he's still going to find his friend, he asked the forest ranger, and he said he only saw one person come up the mountain that day. But it was way too fast to be the man. I believe he was about 69. But he was a connection I see between a lot of missing persons report is the person's always really fit and really physically active.
Okay. That's another one of the Politis missing 411 cases. What about out in Pluto's caves? Anything? Do you know anything about stuff going on out there?
No, I do not.
Okay. And I did a podcast about, I guess it was it was the one before the last one, and talking about my trip, which was how you found me, and how John Vivanco had remote viewed that guy disappearing.
Yes. And
this Pluto's cave thing, and how in his remote viewing sessions they seemed to think that they'd been abducted, and another person had been abducted at Pluto's caves by a tall alien, and they had been abducted for genetic experiments. Mm-hmm. And then I also talked about the case of the 5-year-old boy that was abducted with his grandmother. Yeah,
he said he was abducted by a robot version of his grandma.
Yeah. So, do you hang out at Mount Shasta that much?
Oh yeah.
You go to what is the name of that shop? The Soul Connections?
The one on Mount Shasta Boulevard?
Yep. Big blue one with, I cannot remember her name. And she's a beautiful lady. And anyway, she really set us up. And did you see the pictures of the Lemurians and all that?
Yeah, I see them everywhere.
Okay. And so do you hike up on Mount Shasta?
The farthest I've gone is a little bit up from Bunny Flats, but I've never been all the way to the summit.
Okay. And what's your thought? I mean, are you afraid? You're not going to go certain places because you're afraid this might happen to you?
No, I'm not afraid per se. I think it's interesting, and I'd actually enjoy having another really close encounter like that. But hopefully nothing comes and eats me.
Okay. All right, Tony. Well, tell me a little bit about UFOs.
There's a lot of reports. I've seen cigar-shaped ones flying above Mount Shasta, because where my grandma lives, if you walk across the street or up into the field down the street, you have a really amazing view of the volcano. And she's seen them. A lot of people in my family have seen them, and I've heard many reports from people around town seeing UFOs entering and exiting the mountain also.
So, how does that work? When they're exiting the mountain, are they just basically materializing, or do you see something open up?
I don't think people see something open up, but their theory is it goes inside because there's a UFO base, or some people even believe it's the Lemurians. It's their way of getting around. It's not even aliens. There's a lot of theories about it.
So have you heard anybody talk about what particular beings? Because if you're up here at the Easeti Ranch at Mount Adams, it is the felines. They are called the Lyrans. And do you know who's flying into Mount Shasta?
Lemurians. Some people say it could be aliens. But
okay. All right. Because if it's Lemurians, they were supposed to be a human civilization. So anyway, my original question was have you seen those pictures of the little beings? They look like little pieces of wood, actually, with funny heads.
I don't think I have.
If you go into the Soul Connection, she showed me, the woman there that I can't remember her name, showed me these pictures that these these guys had come up from Mexico or Argentina or something, and they were like medicine men, and they were taking pictures, and they were talking to the bushes, and the people taking the pictures said, "Who are you talking to?" And then when they developed the pictures, there were these. They looked like something they looked like Groot in that movie, and they have glowing hearts.
Really?
So yeah, and go into Soul Connection. If she's still there, I'm sure she'll show you those pictures. But
that's really, I'm actually going to do that.
Yeah, pretty interesting, and I've got them somewhere. But if I find them, I'll send them to you because it's pretty cool. I know I have it on a video. I know for sure I have it on video. All right, so what I'm looking at now, because I'm doing a series of things on hotspots, and so Mount Shasta was that's why you ran into me, because we did a thing on Mount Shasta as a hotspot, and I just have to ask you this. I've done a couple of things on Paulides, and do you think there is any connection between, because you've got Yosemite down the road, and down the road from Yosemite you have Bohemian Grove. You know anything about Bohemian Grove?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, look it up. It's very interesting. It's where the rich and powerful hang out and do crazy things. So that we probably don't even want to know about. And that's also kind of I'll plug my book again, kind of in the Rainier paradigm. But anyway, going back to your research, what can you give us any kind of insight that you think that the Bigfoot is?
More human than ape, but I don't think they're as civilized as us, and I think they like being more isolated and away from humans.
Okay. Any reason for that?
I believe some of them, they don't really understand because they're not out walking the cities and used to all these people around them. Besides when people come camping during the camping season, like the summer and stuff, and then they're alone in the winter and isolated again. Okay. I think it's just lack of human connection.
Okay. Do you think that do you think that they are a branch of humans? You think that that they could be like a Cro-Magnon or something like that?
I believe it's highly possible that they have some relation to us. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Tony, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this stuff, and I'm really interested in some more and listening to accounts of some more of your research. And at some point, I'd like to have you back on.
That would be
so it'd be great to have you come on again. Is there anything you'd like to say to people about, based on what you know, on what you found out about, like the area you live in, the UFOs, any insights that you might have into this whole big picture?
There's a lot of, if you just look at the details, there's a lot of connections you can make between many different things, especially in tiny hotspot areas like Mount Shasta. And the more you get to know people, the more stories you hear and the more connections you're able to make.
Okay. All right. And so it's going to be, you run into like some really crazy stories sometimes where do people come to you and tell you these things or how does that work?
I'll ask around, or if I see somebody camping, I'll go and sit with them and ask. It's more me just bugging people. But they're really nice people and they're interested in, yes.
Well, that's amazing. Well, all right. Well, if you're welcome to come back. If you have an account you want to come back and talk about at any time, Tony, please come back. You're a really nice young man, and it's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. It's been nice talking to you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been really great having you, Tony. So, yeah, you guys, I'm gonna try to encourage Tony to get this book of his out, and we'll try to bring him back onto Encounters USA. But for right now, I think we're going to call this a wrap, and we just want to encourage everybody that if you are out in the woods, thanks for listening to tonight's show. Please remember, if you've had an encounter, we want to hear about it. Go ahead and email us at encountersusa1@gmail.com or contact us at encountersusa.com, our website, and go to the contact form. All right, everybody. Until next time, be careful out there. And if you're out in the woods, watch your back.